Welcome to the Standard Deviations podcast, presented by Orion Advisor Solutions and hosted by Dr. Daniel Crosby, Orion's Chief Behavioral Officer and New York Times best-selling author. Each week, Dr. Crosby interviews a fascinating new guest on a range of compelling topics, from literature to psychology to financial wellness. To learn more about Dr. Crosby's behavioral finance work at Orion, visit www.orion.com.
Hello and welcome to the Standard Deviations podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel Crosby, and today I'm joined by return guest, Jamie Hopkins, one of the leading voices in retirement planning. Jamie is a best-selling author. He's a speaker. He's a thought leader who has spent years helping advisors and individuals rethink what retirement actually means, not just financially, but of course, for the purposes of this show, psychologically and emotionally as well. Notably, he is the co-author of a new book, Your Retirement Sketchbook, which challenges the traditional idea that retirement is a fixed destination and encourages people to design a flexible, meaningful, and human-centered next chapter. He's a great human and a good friend. Welcome back to the show, Jamie.
Hey, thanks for welcoming me back. You did a great job doing the kickoff of the show there. It was very smooth. I'm impressed.
Well, thank you. I'm only, 8 years into this, or whatever it is at this point. I hope I've figured out how to read a bio now. But yeah, joining us from Nashville today, thanks for making some time. Congratulations on the book. It is fantastic. While I've got one of the smartest people I know here with me, I'm going to begin by asking you one of the hardest questions that I get about retirement. I'm going to steal your answer, and in the future, I'm going to pass it off as my own. Okay? So here we go.
Yeah, that's good. I was wondering who was in the room there with you at first, though. But thanks.
The number of times I get asked this question, it's all about the psychology of decumulation. There's a brand of person, and I would count myself among this type of person, who's good at accumulation and terrible at decumulation. Why is spending our own money so psychologically difficult? Why is it harder than earning it, investing it, accumulating it? And as a follow-up, have we as an industry done a bad job? Like, have we scared people into thinking that they couldn't spend their money and enjoy their lives?
Yeah, you answered a big part of it there. It's something that I called SNS for a long time, which was savings, not spending. And if you look at kind of every nudge, every system, every article that exists out there for the last 35 years, it was all focused on save, 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 right? Don't drink the lattes, don't get the avocado toast, like save. And if you do this and you invest and you put it in target date funds and you just keep putting it away, your account will keep ticking up. And if you do that throughout your career, you'll be okay. And the reality is, it kind of worked. We have all these 401k millionaires. People have invested, they've saved, automatic enrollment and escalation, it all worked. But it was all just kind of this, you can see the chart in your own 401k of it ticking up over time. And you're like, I'm doing the right thing. The challenge is, once you spend 35 years or 30 years telling somebody, and in this case, our entire U.S. population, that savings is good and spending is bad, we get to retirement, we say, hey, just kidding. You need to be really good at spending. And you actually don't need to worry about savings anymore. And you think about that from a training perspective and, how you develop people and how you set frameworks. We set the entire framework that spending is bad. So we see a lot of that U.S. spending data that actually retirees underspend often, at least the ones with money in retirement, because they are afraid of this. And ultimately, what I see working with clients is spending feels like a loss in retirement when they're spending down principal of their portfolio. So it's, at any other time in their life, that was a loss, right? The market downturn, they had to take money out. If they see it dip, it feels like a loss. So to shift that is incredibly challenging. And I think it's why, financial advisors play such a central role in this, move from working world to retirement world.
So what are some practical tips then, both for advisors and for individuals, if you find yourself in this camp of people who've bought this message of don't drink the latte? What would you tell people to kind of make that switch?
Yeah, so I think there's three practical things. So the first one is that planning does help here. And it's why we do cash flow and retirement income plans, is to show somebody what they can actually spend and, based on reasonable modeling, that they won't run out of money. That gives somebody a little bit of confidence. And I think that is helpful, because if you haven't done that analysis, you don't know how long the money's going to last, then you really have to self-insure and you can't spend anything. So that is a really good, normal, practical step. But it's amazing when you look at the data how few Americans have ever done a retirement income projection. It's not normal. In our industry, we feel like it's normal, but for most of America, they have not done that. The second one is actually giving somebody permission to spend. I think is really important. And there's a lot of ways you can do this. One of them is actually by having better sources of guaranteed or fixed income throughout retirement. What you see is those people are willing to spend that dollar amount. So you're giving people permission to spend, that here's this money coming in, whether it's Social Security or annuity or bond ladders or tips, but you're creating a steady cash flow that then could be spent. So I think that's really useful. The third one is a little bit more controversial, and it is in the book. But I actually say that I think as advisors and as an industry, we need to help people learn how to spend from the retirement accounts a couple years before they retire. And this is a relatively new idea I had. I mean, only 3 or 4 years old, which is I think we should stop saving for a lot of our wealth clients that we work with as advisors, maybe 3 years before retirement, and actually have them take some in-plan or IRA distributions for a couple years. Ultimately, I'm talking about, maybe a $2 million client taking 10 grand out for 3 years. It has no real impact on the sustainability of their portfolio. But so they actually get used to seeing a distribution from this account, not saving. So you actually see the account come down a little bit, or at least in the week, maybe over the course of a year, your investments still outperform, but not in a, it's not a scary, it's not a high risk world to do that, has no real impact on their, security, but gives them the experience of just what is it even like to get the 1099-R form? What is it like to take money out of an account that for 30 years you've never touched? I think that's a really good, low risk way to just start this. If you have clients that are great spenders, probably don't need to worry about it. But if they are the ones that, like you said, I don't know how to spend, I just want to keep it all, and I worry about even, how I will take money out of this in the future. So let them try it out before we get there.
I really like all three of those, especially that last one. I don't think that's controversial. I think that makes total sense. In any kind of behavior you're talking about changing, shaping is sort of the psychological term for us. You want to shape this behavior. You don't want to cold turkey it. You don't want to 0 to 60 it. You've never taken a distribution and now this is your only source of income. I think that makes a lot of sense. I plan to use that without attribution well into the future. So thank you.
Forever. Yeah, it's yours.
Thank you very much. Congrats on the book, right? I know it's a labor of love. You are a prolific author. You use the idea of a sketchbook in the book instead of a rigid blueprint, right? Yeah. What does the metaphor reveal about how this all unfolds in real life?
Yeah, and you actually nailed the word perfectly. I mean, the whole idea of the sketchbook is both literal but also was supposed to be like a visual metaphor. It's funny, the first versions of the book didn't have they messed up the printing, so they don't have the spiral part, but the actual outside of the book's supposed to look like a notebook too. But it's just didn't show up in the print, and then the new books have it. But the idea was that retirement's dynamic, life is dynamic, life is about adaptability, and so is retirement. And retirement should be a sketch, not a blueprint. We're not going to build the foundation of the house directly off of it. You're going to sketch it out. And 3 months into retirement, you're going to re-sketch it, and you're going to do it again and again and again. And so that was really the notion of a sketchbook versus, the retirement blueprint, which I think there actually is a book called that. No shot at that book. But, it's really, to me, it's much more dynamic than that. And we did want to use visual metaphors. We wanted to try to make it a little bit more fun. As you said, I've written other books, and people used to joke when I talk to consumers and clients, and they'd be like, more of a picture book kind of person. And I get that comment now with this one. And then I'm like, actually, it's full of pictures. And they kind of pause for a second to be like, is he joking? I'm like, no, there's 125 drawings in it. And they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll take a look at it. I think it was a little bit of a risk of a concept. Everybody does not like it. It's, that's probably a good thing. But a lot of, I'll say, like, regular people compared to some of my other books, like, really enjoy it. And they say it's snackable, it's bite-sized, it's easy for them to understand. But I have had a couple advisors be like, I didn't learn anything. It's like way too simple. And I'm like, well, I also didn't write it for you. So, but I think that's okay, right? That you try to find a balance on writing. And I'm sure you've gone through some of those things in your books before too. Like, who is the exact audience? It's not going to be for everyone. Although when you write a book, you do hope it's probably for more people than less people.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But I do think that's the sign of having done something worthwhile. I am a believer that it should attract as many people as it repels, and that if you've said anything of significance, you're going to, frustrate some people and have some raving fans on the other end. I like that too. I think about when we were having, this is some time ago, obviously, but when we were having our first child, my wife had this very intricate birth plan and sort of this whole sequential step-by-step of how it was going to go. Well, I blessed my daughter with an enormous head, and nothing went to plan. So, and just watching, my wife was, of course, brave and strong and a trooper, but like watching that well-laid plan sort of disintegrate in real time, and that plan had meant so much to her, and she made it happen. But I think sometimes sketching is the best you can do in life, right? That sketching is the best you can do. You have a plan, you do the best you can, but you need to approach it flexibly. And I think retirement certainly fits the bill. A message that I'm hearing with increasing regularity is all about making retirement more human. Even in The Soul of Wealth, I cited some statistics to say that recent retirees, especially men, are some of the saddest people on earth. And that's such a disheartening thing to think about, that you would spend all this time preparing financially for something and then arriving at the date sort of unprepared in other ways. When you think about humanizing retirement or attending to sort of the emotional sides of retirement, what could folks be better doing to prepare for that aspect of it?
Yeah, I think our industry is going through a bit of a shift on this right now, which is, I think a lot of people, they used to talk about what they did, and they're like, I'm an advisor, I help people meet their financial goals and retirement goals. And even recently, I've been like, well, it's really just broader than that. Like, we just help people meet their goals. Like, that's it. It's not just financial goals and retirement goals. It's just, we help people. And it is going to have to be parts of this is like community. Our job is to make sure retirees are like happy and live a good life, not just that their money makes it long enough, right? Like, that's not a success from an advisor or delivery standpoint in my mind, and client service. Like, we want them to be happy. And what you brought up in your book, and you're seeing that data pop up more and more, is that there's a lot of isolated people. We have families that I think passed in the U.S. down to 1.65 is the birth rate. So we're under replacement ratio now. And we have the most amount of men and people that say they don't have three close friends. The number of people without a single friend, I think, has quadrupled since 1990. And, single individuals in retirement, poverty levels are increasing over the last couple years, and they're isolated, they're sad. And, there's not a lot of other people well suited and in the space to, drive some of this change than our industry. Attorneys aren't going to be there. They're not, constantly engaging with them. But we are. And I think we play a crucial role in making sure the holistic life of the person is in a good spot. So challenging them on, like, what communities are you involved with? Like, are you going to church? Are you spending time with family? Or did you move away from everybody and now you feel really disconnected? Like, we can help with this. And I think that conversation is showing up more and more now. But that's a big one. I think that I talk about the community one a lot, and it's an interesting thing, because until I started writing on it, I didn't spend a lot of time like contemplating the changes of communities when you retire. But it's like the only time in life that I can think of when it's like 100% socially acceptable to choose whatever new community you want. And like, nobody really gives you grief about it. Like, if you're like, I don't really want to ever talk to anybody from work ever again. It's totally fine. Like, you just don't have to. And like, if you want to leave your town and like move to Arizona from the East Coast and be like, goodbye church, goodbye community, goodbye nonprofit, I'm going to Arizona to play golf. And everybody's like, hey, congratulations. Hope you have a great, like, at no other point in life could you just kind of like change all of your communities and like just be totally rewarded for it. So it does create this like great reset of, are you finding the communities that fill you up and purposeful communities versus what I deem as accidental communities, which is a lot of the stuff we end up throughout our lives is, you get put on a team at work. If you work for a large company, those are now your friends. You didn't really pick them. That's your now community. You've got kids. I've got kids. Most of my friends now are the parents of my kids' friends. And like, I didn't really pick them. My kids, like, they're kids. So I think that it does offer this amazing time, if you are purposeful about it, to cultivate communities that actually mean something to you.
So I really love what you said there. And I want to sort of bold that it's the one time in your life where you can act a little unconventional and sort of boldly reinvent yourself and get applauded for it. I think so many times, I think about where I'm at, middle-aged, peak earning years, kids at home. If I try and, run off and join the circus, people are going to give me a hard time. But, maybe in 20 years, that's my shot. That's my shot there. I like that.
Like, as much as you might not want to talk to everybody in the industry again, if you tried to leave tomorrow, people would be annoyed that you're not talking to them. Like, they'd be like, Daniel doesn't text me back anymore. We used to be friends. But if you retired, they'd be like, Daniel retired. Best of luck, man. Go enjoy life.
Yeah, congrats. So what's, pulling on this thread a bit more, what's the most surprising thing you've learned about happiness in retirement that has nothing to do with money?
Yeah, I mean, that is the biggest one, really, as you look at the longevity studies, the blue zones, it's being engaged in communities. And I spent a lot of time on this topic. I go with a group of guys, rebel dads, and one of the big conversations that came up 2 years ago was this concept of like the internet, AI, digital relationships, and like the loss of community that is occurring right now, right? We're seeing this isolated, digitally native group that, like, while the most connected digitally, are the least connected to other people that we've ever seen. But you see happiness in retirement has more to do with, are you surrounded by a community, you're eating with them, you're having dinners with them, than it is how much money you have. It's not totally fair, and I think you've posted some stuff on this too. Money actually does buy happiness. Like, people with more money live longer and they're happier. Like, it is like not, I think there's old songs that kind of try to tell you opposite, but you're like, no, like having more money does actually solve a lot of problems in retirement. So if you are more financially secure, you do tend to be happier. But the craziest thing, if you look at the Society of Actuaries longevity, I think it is 15 years difference from the bottom like the bottom 10% of males to the top 5% is 15 years you live longer in the United States on the wealth side. Like, that is, it's always one of those stats that every time I pull it up, like, I'm kind of just absolutely shocked by it. But you do see more isolation, right? Less taking care of yourself, not eating as well. Activity is really important, staying fit and active. I've had a whole rant. I know that you do not drink alcohol. There's a whole interesting like rant going on in the world about like the drop in alcohol consumption and no happy hours, and that people aren't spending time with each other. And that there's some researchers that are saying this actually might have, the drop in alcohol consumption might actually have negative health consequences in total due to the lack of socialization. And so it's a very interesting argument. Like, well, you were like doing something healthy, but at the same time losing community and then becoming isolated, sad, lonely, depressed, and we're going to die faster. And you're like, well, maybe some vices are beneficial and whole for society. So it's very interesting. I kind of went off on a very far tangent, but these are a lot of like the non-financial things that I think about like as the future and society and how we're connected with declining families and how are we going to socialize and come together. And alcohol, oddly enough, served as this social lubricant for 3,000 plus years of society. And there's a big drop in it now. Not all bad, but there is a consequence that comes along with that in light of everything else that's going on in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting to have seen that boomerang a bit. Teens are not driving as much, teens are not drinking as much, teens are not smoking enough. And it's almost like the discourse now has been like, oh, come on, guys, what are you doing?
Yeah. Like it is. It's kind of like,
get out there.
Like, we don't want you to like drink and drive, but we would like you to do like some of these things.
Yeah, go live a little. But, it did, you cited that study earlier about men and friendship. The modal number of friends a man in America has, the modal number from that study is 0.
Yeah.
I mean, so, that's clearly not the mean, but
Right.
or the median, but the modal number, the most frequently occurring response was 0.
Insane.
I mean, that is a shocking statistic.
Well,
And
then isn't it like 60 some percent? It's for men, it's their spouse.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Top friend. And for women, it's actually not. Like their husbands are not the number one best friend. It is very interesting, right? It's like all the guys are like, oh, my best friend is my spouse. And then women are like, well, actually, like I like Cindy and Sarah. Like, yeah, but like,
he's okay.
Yeah. Not my best friend though.
But Jennifer is better. Yeah. No, that's good. Another question I get a lot is about how people at different levels of wealth behave differently, or do they? You've worked with folks across the wealth spectrum. When it comes to the things that we're talking about here, this intersection of retirement and well-being, do wealthy people struggle differently, or is this just a human thing and we're all kind of alike?
There's a lot of we're all kind of alike. I do think that's true. I think when I look at most people, we kind of struggle with similar stuff. I think that human element, like rich people aren't different people. They're the same. Now, the challenges that come up and what you are afforded to spend time thinking about are very different, right? Like you do then start thinking about legacy and values you can pass on and, impact to your community with large gifts and donations to your school. And for a lot of people that are just trying to get by, they're not afforded, whether you want to look at it like Maslow's hierarchy of need, they're not afforded that time and ability to worry about those items. And so I don't know that the people are different, but with the security of wealth and good planning, you can move to focus on other things. And that is kind of what frees up. That's the difference that I see is when I'm dealing with really high net worth clients, they're talking about their great-grandchildren and things they want to leave behind for them and businesses transfer. And like they're focused on a different problem than, when we're dealing with some of our branch clients at the bank that have $40,000, right? And like they're trying to get every extra, 0.5% of interest on it and cut every expense and deal with debt. And it is a totally different focus. And there's more stress associated with that side too. But it's hard then to focus on like, what am I going to do for my great-grandchildren when you're just like, do I have enough money with inflation to like be okay for the next 4 years?
Yeah. I think about this, it's a paraphrase. It's one of these quotes that's like attributed to Gandhi, but did he ever say it? No, this kind of thing, right? But it's useful whoever said it. But, to this idea that to a poor person, bread is God, right? Like if you don't have enough to eat, if you have 40,000 saved for retirement, like you're not worried about the meaning of life or your legacy or whatever. You're trying to get an extra 0.5% out of your high yield savings account and trying to get enough to eat. But then, when it comes to folks who do have more wealth, I do think it frees you up to have these higher order thoughts and higher order conversations. However, you've got to take that on. Like you've got to have the conversation. And I think sometimes we're loath to do that. It's been interesting. There's all this research around all the excess free time we have now relative to our, grandparents and great-grandparents. And we've replaced it all with screen time. So it's like, yay. And that's kind of how I think about being really wealthy. Like, okay, congratulations, you made it, you won. Now, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just all better vacations and things like that. This is if, in my opinion, you've been that lucky, that blessed, you've worked that hard, you've arrived at that place, I think it's kind of on you to have those conversations about how you pass it on and do something meaningful with that money.
Yeah, and I think for those of us who are forwarded, especially in this industry and country and time period that we live in, while there's so many things going on, it's also like we're about in the safest time period we've ever been in the history of the U.S. I mean, it's just like it's the safest it's ever been. I always tell people about that, like, back in like 250 years ago, like the stagecoaches to move money from Philly out to the suburbs, which wasn't called suburbs then, like you had to have armed guards. Like you couldn't freely move like 50 miles without weapons. Like that's how dangerous the world was. Like we drive around freely all across the country without much of a concern on that every day, right? Now, some places are worse than others, but we just live in a very blessed environment. And as you said, like more free time, all these things. But I don't know that as humans, we've been able to like appreciate it. Like I think at the same time, we seem very stressed out as a species and like fighting and all these other things and not very appreciative. But, if you plucked some people out of times in the past and put them in our time, they'd be like, wait, what? There's air conditioning and heating all the time and like basically unlimited food in the US, right? We really have not had a food shortage here and clean water. And like, this is pretty amazing. And, we now have a device that can basically answer any question you've ever had in your life.
I just moved to Utah. For the listeners who don't know, I just moved to Utah from Atlanta, and so I have a rental car. I have to buy a car out here. My car is being shipped out, and my newly minted 16-year-old driver will be getting my 14-year-old car. But so I'm looking for a new car. Currently renting a car, and on my drive into this morning, my rental car had cooled seats on a hot summer day. And I was like, man, kings didn't live like this, No. Kings did not live like this. All right. So we're getting toward the end here. I want to ask you two more questions. One, we want to start a fight. We want to start a controversy online. So let's talk about the FIRE movement. That is a reliable way. If you talk about indexing, if you talk about bogleheads, if you talk about FIRE, you're sure to be a party. So let's talk about the FIRE movement. Tell the listeners what it is. What do you think it gets right? What do you think it gets wrong?
Yeah, so I would probably say that I am not a big fan of the FIRE movement. So just that's what's the abbreviation? Financial independence, retire early, I think is the abbreviation. But it was this whole idea of like live super frugal, like don't spend money on anything, and then retire and live in a tiny home and then like go enjoy life. There's a lot of good in that. It's like don't overspend. That's a great rule. Like, yeah, I like that. And like, can you retire earlier because you don't really like working? Like, great. But when you kind of look at some of the people who really push this, like, I don't know, 7-8 years ago, a lot of them went back to work. Like it didn't work. Like they couldn't save enough in 7 years to actually be financially independent because all their like models were like, well, I'll just never spend anything. And then like the car breaks down. They're like, I actually didn't have a plan for an extra, car prices going up 20% a year for 5 years. And now a basic car is like $55,000. And they're like, that's half of my spending this year. I've got to go back to work. But I think what they got right is, you should try to focus on life if you don't get meaning from work. I think the big part that it misses is hopefully you find a career where maybe not your day-to-day every interaction, but the job and the career and the company that you're with or the industry is doing good in some way, shape, or form that you get filled up by it. And I think that part, the FIRE whole movement just completely ignores. Like, I love our profession. I love being in it every day. Does it mean, like I just was doing something with finance right before this call? Did I love that? Absolutely not. But do I love our profession? 100%. I never really want to leave this profession. So to me, that is my why, though. And I think a lot of people have heard this, but my dad passed away when I was 8 years old. Neither of my parents are college graduates. They're in the construction world. And my why became helping millions of Americans like my mom be more secure for retirement. I'm never going to stop loving my mom. There's never going to be a period where people don't need help with that. So like to me, there's no desire to retire because I'm doing what I should be doing with purpose in my life and I get paid for it. Now, I think that part is something that the FIRE movement kind of misses. It's like, well, figure out, like, you want to retire because you don't like your job, basically, and like go find something that you really love doing. And it's not always going to be great, but if you like going into work 70% of the time, that's pretty good. And I think that part is, just really missing. I think the frugality is a bit misleading too, because I think you can control that in your 30s, in your 40s. When you get into your 60s and 70s, the ability to control some of that frugality and like do everything yourself and not have health expenses pop up, like you do lose some of that. I think a lot of the modeling that I've seen in that movement kind of assumes that I have this full autonomy and control over my life, that health events aren't going to pop up. Inflation's not going to pop up and be higher, and gas prices all of a sudden are, $6, $7 a gallon. And some of these people were living out of vans in those like mobile homes. And well, that was great when gas prices were $3. And those shocks make it really hard to live, 40, 50 years retired without having to go back. And, that's a concern. If you retired in 40 for 8 years, like how do you get back employed? It's super challenge. I mean, I imagine that the AI HR programs are pretty much Xing every single one of those people out as soon as they hit the application send button. They get the immediate bounce back. Sorry, but you didn't work for 8 years. That's it, right? You can't even get a meeting with somebody now. So that's my view. And I'm sure there's going to be some FIRE people that just tell me I'm stupid. It'll be good.
Yeah, that it'll build character. No, I mean, we're very much on the same page. I think that's where we'll bring back in your concept of a retirement sketchbook, though, because a lot of the stuff that I see by hardcore FIRE folks is modeled out a little too cleanly. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to pile it all in the S&P and I'll get 10% a year. And it's modeled out as if it's a steady state 10% a year, not down 50%, up 30%, Like, if we could all hope for 10% every year on the dot, things would be a lot different than they do.
I didn't fact check this one, but I did see it, so somebody can look it up later. But I saw some stat about LeBron James. I think his career, he's averaged 27, 7, and 7. Mm-hmm. That's his career. He has apparently never had a game where he's actually had a 27, 7, and 7 stat in like 1,400 games.
Right.
Which is wild, because you think that's like a stat he would have landed on, but apparently he's never had it, and that's his career average. And it's a great example in like basketball terms of like, your average return from the S&P is not how any particular game plays out.
Right. All right. 90 seconds, Jamie.
Yeah.
If someone listening is within 5 years of retirement, what's something non-financial, an exercise, a conversation to do that you would point them in the direction of?
Yeah, since I mentioned LeBron, he's probably within 5 years of retirement. So if he is a listener to the show, do one tour, go around, say goodbye to everybody, do it, right? So that is and LeBron's better than Jordan, also going to cause all the FIRE people to lose their minds. So that's my next hot take. But no, if you are 5 years out from retirement, the basic thing you need to do, and this is the most important thing, is just understand how much income you can generate in retirement. That is like, it's not a lot of work. There's calculators, tools. But if you haven't done that piece, figuring out how you're going to spend your time, what you're going to do, your values, your kids, it just all falls apart when you get there and they say, oh, I want to do all these things. And you say, well, you can generate like 40 grand a year. They're like, well, that's not enough. And you're like, well, we now have to work on how you're going to spend money and how you're going to live your life. And we got to readjust things. And that is probably the single most important thing. The other one is if you want to make your retirement money last longer, work longer. It's like there's not magic. It's like if you can work 6 months longer than you planned, that will have the biggest impact of really anything to making a portfolio last longer.
Yeah. Every year you work, such a huge help. So find work you love, do it for as long as you can. It's going to make you happier. It's going to make that dollar stretch. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamie Hopkins, he loves his mom. He loves helping you retire in a way that makes you well in the most holistic terms possible. Jamie, one more time, what's the name of the book and where can people find it?
Yeah, Your Retirement Sketchbook, and Bonnie Treichels, the other co-author, amazing woman and leader, runs a couple businesses. But you put it in Google or chat or whatever. It's on Amazon and everywhere. So yeah, check it out.
Congrats, man. It's a wonderful book. I hope the listeners will go grab it. And thanks for coming back on the show, Jamie.
Thanks for having me on, my friend.
Thanks for tuning in to Standard Deviations. If you can't wait till next week for more behavioral finance insights, visit www.orion.com. All opinions expressed by Dr. Daniel Crosby and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of or endorsement by Orion and its affiliates, subsidiaries, and employees. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for legal, tax, and investment decisions. The opinions are based upon information the participants consider reliable.